Welcome to Cruise News, your daily update on everything happening at sea. Visit cruisenews.io to see today's stories and sign up for email alerts.
So today, we're really focusing on a part of the vacation that is almost universally taken for granted, right up until the exact moment it all just completely falls apart.
Right, the journey to the ship.
Exactly. For you, the passenger, the vacation is supposed to begin the second you lock your front door. You grab your bags, you head to the airport, or you pull onto the highway. But recent events across the globe are showing us just how incredibly fragile those travel logistics have become.
Yeah, that fragility is, it's really the defining story in travel right now. We're looking at two sides of a very complex coin today. First, we're going to examine the sheer disruptive power of severe weather and sudden infrastructure failures.
Like major winter storms.
Right, winter storms, unexpected regional airport closures, things like that. We'll look at how these events completely rewrite a cruise itinerary before the ship even drops its mooring lines. And then we're going to pivot to the industry's structural response to all this, which is fascinating. Yeah.
It is. We are seeing this massive strategic expansion into regional no-fly cruise options. It fundamentally changes the value proposition for travelers who just want to skip the aviation network entirely.
I mean, I want you to picture your last truly stressful travel day. Just imagine you're standing there doing the Home Alone sprint through Terminal B.
Pulling a rolling suitcase that suddenly feels like it weighs 50 pounds.
Oh, at least 50 pounds.
Yeah.
And you're staring up at a glowing red departures board, watching the delays just stack up hour by hour. And you're doing that terrifying mental math.
Trying to figure out if you'll actually make it to the cruise terminal before the gangway goes up.
Right. It is a total nightmare scenario.
Yeah.
But as we'll explore today, the industry is making strategic moves that might mean your next voyage could start a lot closer to home. So let's start with the absolute chaos that just paralyzed the Northeast United States.
The winter storm Hernando.
Yeah. Just how bad was the situation on the ground?
Well, Hernando was a brutal reminder that the maritime industry is, at the end of the day, entirely at the mercy of the atmosphere. The National Weather Service tracked this massive system dumping roughly 12 to 24 inches of snow across huge swaths of the region.
Wow.
To give you a hyper-local metric, they recorded a punishing 15 inches falling right on Central Park. But the thing is...
The snow wasn't even the main issue, right?
Exactly. The snow was actually the secondary problem. The primary threat was the wind. We saw sustained, brutal wind gusts hitting that 40 to 70 mile per hour range.
That's practically hurricane force.
It's severe. When winds reach that velocity, you lose visibility, the power grid gets compromised, coastal flooding alerts light up, and the entire logistical heartbeat of a region just completely stops.
And sitting right in the middle of this frozen, paralyzed region were two absolute behemoths of the cruise industry. You had Royal Caribbean's Odyssey of the Seas stuck over at Cape Liberty.
Over in Bayonne, New Jersey.
Right. And MSC Cruises' MSC Meraviglia was locked down at the Brooklyn Cruise Terminal. Both of these ships were supposed to depart on Sunday, February 22, 2026, heading down to the Bahamas.
And neither moved an inch.
Not until late Monday evening. But here's the thing that always confuses people. You look out your balcony window, the snow has stopped falling, the sun might even be trying to peek out. Why can't the ship just leave?
It's a great question, and it really comes down to a concept we might call the invisible harbor walls. The constraints holding a ship back aren't usually at the pier itself.
Okay, so where are they?
The danger lies in the approach channels, the bridges you have to clear, and the open waters right where the harbor meets the ocean. Take the Odyssey of the Seas, for example. That is a 169,000 gross ton vessel.
Which is a number that is really hard to conceptualize. How big is that in practical terms?
So to put 169,000 gross tons into perspective, imagine tipping the Washington Monument on its side. Then add a few football fields to its length, stack it 15 stories high, and float it in the water.
That is massive.
It's a floating city. It carries up to 5,510 guests. Now, when you have a vessel that massive, it acts like a giant sail. The surface area of the ship catching the wind is huge.
Which is called windage, right?
Exactly, windage. Those 70-mile-per-hour crosswinds will literally push that massive steel wall laterally. Maneuvering near concrete breakwaters, or navigating under the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, or even passing through narrow dredged shipping channels becomes incredibly dangerous.
Because you could just drift off course.
Right. A slight miscalculation or a sudden gust can push the ship out of the channel and run it aground. So, port authorities step in. They restrict vessel traffic entirely until those winds moderate, regardless of whether the snow has stopped. It is an absolute mandate of basic safety.
That makes a lot of sense, but it creates a massive logistical headache. When a ship is delayed by more than 24 hours, you get this incredible domino effect on the itinerary. You don't just shave a day off the front and keep everything else the same.
No, a late departure essentially rewrites the whole week. The logistical puzzle is fascinating. Take the MSC Meraviglia. They lost a full day, which meant they didn't have the transit time required to make it all the way down to the Bahamas on their original schedule.
So what did they do?
They had to completely drop their planned stop in Nassau. The whole schedule got reorganized on the fly. Passengers were sitting on the ship, refreshing their smartphone apps, and watching Port Canaveral and the MSC Ocean Cay Marine Reserve get shifted to completely different days later in the week.
Think about the port fees, the local excursions, the provisioning. All of that has to be rearranged by the corporate office in real time.
It's a massive undertaking.
And for the Odyssey of the Seas, they basically had to play it entirely by ear. Once they finally got harbor clearance late Monday, they just started steaming south along the U.S. Atlantic coast.
Hoping the weather would hold.
Right. They had to advise guests to keep checking the app for updates on their stops in Port Canaveral, Perfect Day at Coco Cay, and Nassau, because the captain was literally adjusting the speed and course based on real-time weather data.
Though, it is worth pointing out that the passenger experience in these situations is radically different depending on where you are. Being stuck on a megaship during a blizzard is actually quite comfortable.
True, you're not exactly roughing it.
Not at all. Passengers on the Meraviglia reported that while they were tied up in Brooklyn, all the dining venues, the indoor entertainment, the bars, everything was fully operational. They essentially got a free stationary sea day.
Compare that to the Norwegian breakaway. They actually managed to slip out of the Manhattan cruise terminal on time that Sunday for a 12-night Caribbean run, beating the harbor closure.
But they paid a severe price for that punctuality.
Oh, absolutely. They sailed right into the teeth of the storm system. Guests faced incredibly rough seas and strong winds immediately upon leaving the harbor. Sometimes being tied to the dock with a cocktail is vastly superior to pitching and rolling through a winter gale just to stay on schedule.
And this weather system had a massive reach. It is important to understand that winter storms ripple far beyond the immediate epicenter of the snow. Look at Royal Caribbean's Star of the Seas.
Right, that ship was sailing out of Port Canaveral in Florida on Sunday. They were 1,000 miles away from the snow in New York.
Exactly. But the massive cold front and low pressure system pushing down the Atlantic coast churned up the ocean all the way down to the Bahamas. Because of those unfavorable conditions, Star of the Seas had to entirely cancel a Monday stop at Coco Cay.
Because of the swells?
Yes, it was simply too dangerous to tender or dock, so guests got an extra sea day and more time in St. Thomas instead, with all their Coco Cay shore excursions automatically refunded.
But let's bring this back to the absolute most critical vulnerability highlighted by Winter Storm Hernando. The people who weren't on the ships at all.
The fly-to-cruise passenger.
Yes. This is where the logistics truly break down. Because of this storm, we saw massive, sweeping regional flight cancellations across the entire Northeast corridor.
It perfectly highlights the vulnerability of centralized departure hubs.
It frankly doesn't matter if the cruise line kindly delays the ship's departure until Monday evening if your connecting flight into Newark, JFK, or LaGuardia is grounded until Tuesday afternoon.
You're just stuck.
When you have tens of thousands of people trying to funnel into one major transit point on a specific day, a single severe weather event shatters that entire network. You have families stranded in airports in Chicago or Atlanta, completely missing their vacation because the final leg into New York is frozen solid.
Which brings us to another stark example of travel fragility. This one doesn't rely on a sprawling multi-state winter storm. It is about how sudden, highly localized disruptions in aviation can create the exact same nightmare.
Yeah, the friction inherent in the aviation network. Let's look at the sudden halt to regional travel we saw with the Bangor Airport closure. On Sunday night, January 25, 2026, there was an incident at Bangor International Airport in Maine. Give us the facts on the ground there.
The details are sobering, and they really illustrate how instantaneously infrastructure can freeze. According to the Federal Aviation Administration, a plane linked to a Houston-based entity crashed during the takeoff phase just before 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
And the FAA confirmed there were 8 people on board, right?
Yes, 8 people on board, and the immediate ripple effect on travel was absolute.
The airport was immediately closed. There was no reopening timeline provided. All outbound flights grounded. all inbound flights diverted. Why is the shutdown so complete and immediate?
Because a takeoff crash is among the most heavily scrutinized aviation failures possible.
Hmm.
The moment an incident like this occurs, the National Transportation Safety Board, alongside the FAA, takes immediate jurisdiction over the site.
Right, it becomes an active investigation scene.
Their absolute first priority is securing the scene to preserve the integrity of the investigation. They have to document evidence, secure the wreckage, and ensure there are no secondary hazards. You cannot just sweep a runway, clear the debris, and resume flights an hour later. The entire regional transportation node is taken completely offline while federal investigators do their work.
Think about what that means for a traveler. If you are a cruiser living in Maine, trying to fly out of Bangor to connect through Atlanta down to Miami for a Monday cruise departure, you are completely trapped.
You can't just rent a car and drive to Miami in time.
You probably can't even get a rental car to drive to Boston because everyone else whose flight was canceled just booked them all.
It illustrates a massive structural force shaping how people travel today. Think back to a month prior, December 22, 2025. A medical transport plane from Merida, Mexico, crashed while attempting to land in foggy conditions near Skol's International Airport in the Galveston Bay area of Texas.
Which is a major cruise hub region.
Exactly. Just like in Bangor, you see how a single regional aviation failure creates massive, cascading bottlenecks. For cruisers who rely on these regional airports to connect to major maritime hubs, incidents like this emphasize the inherent friction of fly-to-cruise logistics. You are putting the fate of your thousands of dollars vacation into the hands of a highly complex, highly vulnerable aviation network before you ever smell the ocean.
So if flying and navigating to these mega hubs is becoming this much of a headache, whether it is a blizzard in New York, a tragic aviation bottleneck in Maine, or fog in Texas, what is the alternative? How is the market responding to this traveler anxiety?
This brings us to a major industry pivot. Enter the regional homeports.
Right. Ambassador Cruise Line is making a very aggressive, calculated move here.
They absolutely are. Ambassador Cruise Line has announced they are launching their first ever sailings from Portsmouth starting in April 2026.
Ambassador CEO Christian Verheunig is being incredibly clear about the strategy behind this. He is directly targeting what he calls the simplicity and convenience of no-fly cruising.
It's a huge selling point.
Ambassador's primary home port has historically been London Tilbury, and they already run sailings from Bristol and Liverpool. But by adding Portsmouth, they are heavily targeting travelers in the south of England. They are trying to offer them the ultimate modern luxury.
The ability to bypass the airport completely?
Yes.
It is a fascinating counter-movement to the megaship trend we discussed earlier. While the 5,600 passenger giants are stuck waiting for harbor clearance in major hubs, Ambassador is deploying a very different asset. The Portsmouth season, which runs through April 2027, will be operated by a ship called Ambition.
Right, the newest ship in their fleet.
But it has a capacity of just 1,200 passengers.
That is a tiny fraction of the size of the Odyssey of the Seas.
Yeah.
We're talking about a totally different onboard experience.
It reinforces a completely different scale and approach to the business. It is the essence of regional cruising. Andrew Williamson, the head of cruise and ferry at Portsmouth International Port, pointed out exactly why this geographical setup works so beautifully.
Direct motorway access.
Exactly. Portsmouth has direct motorway access right to the port gates. For a consumer, the logistics are a dream. You pack your bags, load them into the boot of your car, drive down the M27 motorway, park right at the port, and walk directly onto the ship in a matter of minutes.
No baggage weight limits, no agonizing security lines.
No waiting at the gate, and absolutely zero risk of a flight delay ruining your trip.
It sounds incredibly civilized, but I have to ask, is convenience alone enough? Look at the offerings. Ambassador has scheduled 8 itineraries for this Portsmouth season, right?
Yes, mostly covering European destinations. They have a 6-night escape to Belgium, France, and Holland departing April 6th, 2026. Fares for that start at $1,199 per person for a suite.
Okay, that's not bad for a suite.
Then you have longer voyages, like a 10-night springtime sunshine in Portugal and Spain departing April 12, starting at $829 per person for an inside cabin.
So synthesizing those numbers, what we are really seeing is Ambassador pricing these localized experiences highly competitively. They aren't just undercutting the base fares of the massive megaships. They are factoring in the money you save on flights, hotels, and airport parking to lure in travelers who are simply fed up with the friction of modern air travel.
They are also leaning heavily into specialized, culturally tailored programming to make these regional sailings unique to the local demographic.
Oh, like the Irish mini break.
Yes, April 22, 2026. It is a three-night sailing featuring a full theatrical production of Seven Drunken Nights, the story of the Dubliners.
That's very specific.
It is. It comes complete with an Irish-inspired dinner menu and curated shore excursions in Dublin and Dunlawcare. They're building an experience specifically for British cruisers who want a quick, frictionless getaway.
And they are aggressive with their promotions, too. Launching a Treat Yourself campaign offering up to 20% off balcony and suite fares through April 1st, 2026. This applies to the Ambition sailings from Portsmouth, as well as their other regional hubs like Newcastle and Dundee.
Yeah.
But here's where I want to push back a little bit. We see ambassadors doing a lot of work with local travel agents. But is a grassroots campaign really enough to pull consumers away from the legacy brands that have massive marketing budgets and ships with literal roller coasters on them?
It is a fair question, but in the cruise industry, the travel agent is incredibly powerful, especially for the demographic that prefers mid-sized, no-fly cruising. Ambassador knows this, which is why their strategy for building a local bond is so critical.
How so?
Alongside the Portsmouth launch, they announced an extensive 2026 trade partnership visit program. They are offering 14 different ship visit opportunities aboard Ambition and their other vessel, Ambience, at regional ports all around the UK.
Including bringing these agents right into Portsmouth on April 22.
Exactly. Nicola Harper, their head of distribution, is treating trade partners as the absolute foundation of their regional success. They are bringing these local travel agents on board, giving them brand briefings, showing them the cabins, and serving them a four-course lunch that mimics the actual onboard dining experience.
I see the logic. If you are an older traveler in Hampshire, you trust your local travel agent. If that agent had physically been on the ship, eaten the food, and seen how easy the parking is, they are going to highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
Why send your client to fight the crowds at Heathrow when you know they can just drive 20 minutes down the road and have a four-course lunch waiting for them?
Yeah.
It builds a fiercely loyal customer base, entirely insulated from aviation headaches.
This structural shift brings up an entirely new concept, and it is something I want you, the listener, to chew on as we wrap up today's reporting.
Yeah, let's hear it.
If no-fly, regional cruising becomes the dominant trend for mid-sized ships, completely bypassing the aviation network, how long until we see major infrastructural investments in ground transport specifically tailored for cruising?
That's an interesting thought.
Will we start seeing high-speed rail lines built directly connecting major inland cities right to the cruise terminals in these coastal ports? Could the cruise lines of the future need to become essentially railroad operators to ensure their passengers get to the ship without ever setting foot in an airport?
Thanks for listening to Cruise News. Visit cruisenews.io to catch up on the latest updates and sign up for free email alerts.